Hello, my name is William Windmill. I'm the director, creator, and animator of Samurai Sushi. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I wanted to show you the different stages and how I collaborate with other people, each of the steps that go into making one of these episodes, or any animation for that matter. Right now on screen, you're seeing the directing storyboards. These are the drawings that I did to figure out the story and the shots that I wanted. And this is a little bit of my north when talking to other people and when looking over and deciding what we're gonna do. And this is really the stuff that I want to have in one way or another end up on the screen. So you'll see a lot of the key elements that ended up on the episode in this first pass, especially stuff like the wide shots, the position of the ketchup bottle and the tamaki roll. In this stage, I'm not worried about the perspective. I'm just thinking of composition, the elements, the size of the elements, stuff that I need to do. A lot of these don't have backgrounds. Now, at this stage, I have two options. One, I go into layout and try to figure this out. Or two, I can get someone else involved. And what happened with this one is that I want to see what other ideas and camera movements could be explored within the structure of this episode. What I did was to send this to Bob Clark, which is an amazing storyboard artist. And what you guys are seeing now is the next step in that, which is, what happens when you get more people involved. And obviously this is a lot more clear than my initial drawings, and you have a lot more movement to walk through the actions. Bob had a few magical ideas and stuff that stuck through all the way through the end. The first one was giving it a little bit more of an anime aesthetic, which I had implied, but definitely a lot of the slow motion and this type of shots where you see the slash before the actual cut happens. This is pretty much what ended up on the screen. In fact, I just trace over his drawing to keep that feeling, and I love the 2D structure of that. Yeah, also this amazing establishing shot of Miyamoto and then of the sword. The other thing that he came up with, which was really cool, was the crucifying of the sushi. I thought that was a really good. Initially, the ketchup idea came up when I was trying to figure out what would kill a sushi, and my girlfriend Olga just said, just kill them with ketchup.
Ketchup.
And it was a funny thing because we live in the Dominican Republic, and that's something that I want to say some Dominicans will do, which is put ketchup on a sushi, and it's horrifying. It completely defies the purpose of eating sushi. Yeah, there were a lot of things that got a lot clearer with this path and this idea of the sword coming in. He came up with that shot. And that's a shot that you'll see later on. We had a reflection here, but it didn't read through as clearly. Some stuff translates, sometimes some stuff doesn't. And, it's a matter of picking what really works on each of these stages and moving on. Yeah, what you're gonna see now is the first pass where we go into 3D and we start to see a little bit of the implementation of these stages and what happens afterwards. All right. This is the first pass that I did with camera, and here I'm trying to get all the shots that we had in 2D down in 3D. And it's a matter of coming in with really rough assets. At this stage, I don't even have all the riceless model, and sometimes I don't have all the props. But the idea is to see what's the layout that's gonna make this 2D stuff translate here. It really helps out to plan the stuff that I need to build later on and start figuring out the key elements of the camera movement and what lens I need to start using. I just started with the basic element. Right now, the only thing that I've sculpted is, this rough setup for the ketchup bottle.
I mean, it looks like shit.
I wanted to make sure that the ketchup bottle felt like it was made by stuff that you could find at home, and that is the aesthetic for the entire run of the show. Stuff that you could build with your kids if you were doing a school project.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
Here you can see some of the early designs of the riceless. I might reuse that one later, but at some point it just felt like all of the sushis were really flashy. So I dialed it down so we had somewhere to go. So I had very exaggerated and iconic sushis for all of these, and they were interesting designs, but I ended up toning down some of them to be less distracting.
You can't throw me out, I'm art.
In this stage, I guess that the main thing is making sure that we have stuff that's very readable. I really like the idea of the popsicle sticks as a building material, because then you don't question it. It's okay, rubber bands and popsicle sticks make up a lot of things. That was particularly fun to play around and come up with a cross, for example. Here you can still see the temple on the back. That temple gets moved to the left at the end of the episode. The main reason is that the temple is on fire, and it became really distracting if it was on every single shot. And that's something that you need to use a little bit of imagination to fix. The interesting thing about the Tori arc is that in Japanese culture, it signifies the entrance to a sacred place. The fact that we went through that arc really gave it a lot of weight in terms of, okay, we are passing through a sacred place, and these people did the worst thing you could do to it, which is burn it. After this stage, I go into my first animation pass, and my first animation pass has a very particular feature, which is that it has a little bit of lighting in it, and I need to see these things with lighting, otherwise it doesn't flow as well for me. In here, I haven't created any lights. I just have like an HDRI and a sunlight, a directional light, just to figure out the directionality of how I'm laying out this stuff. And I find that doing that makes it more cohesive. In this instance, for example, I needed the fog because that's an important element. This is the first stage where we see the actual length of the episode. All the little things that I need for narrative, I try to include here. There's a little bit of a lip sync. At this stage, I record all the voices. I'm doing all the characters at first, and then I just leave a few of them. I'm the voice for Miyamoto. So here you can see like the progression of a little bit of the layout shots and how they ended up. Once you like sync things up to the dialogue and you see them cut together, the main thing that happened here is that I realized we need some more breathing room for these shots to get the emotional weight in. So yeah, we have our first proper lighting pass, and obviously a lot more polishing with animation. Here you can see some lights. I added the clouds here. This is something that if I flip through the previous shot and the new shot, you can see some of the decisions on this one. Obviously, we don't have a nice background. The mountains are made out of cardboard paper and just cutouts. Those clouds came in from some reference of an art installation that had paper clouds, and I really like those. You can see how I started to shape and clean up the design of the ketchup bottle to have some color pencils on the right, and just trying to figure out the mechanism for the lever, and just like some general like changing of lenses and moving of the camera so that the composition reads a lot better. This one felt a little small. Just switching the lens and pulling back a little help out with getting the scale right. So you get some directionality from the light. Here the arc I decided to change so that it's made out of Legos, and I felt that fit in with the scale. One thing you'll notice here is that the sushis are really small, and on the final one I tweaked so that it's a little bit bigger. But you can see, for example, this, how it changes from not having any lights and just the HDRI to lighting the shots and getting that nice rim light.
Can I give you a rim job?
Sign here. I also tweaked a little bit the camera so that we were shooting this from a longer lens. So I think that now seeing this shot back to back, I like the previous one a little bit more. But you can go back and forth with this stuff forever. The next shot gets a mustache. The voice of this Riceless is Pablo Chea, and him and his dad are famously known for having this mustache. I decided to incorporate that into this design. Yeah, here we have the shot of this guy running, and here you can see a little bit of what happens with the change in. See, right? So here you have an empty background, and what happens when you add the clouds and the mountains. I think it really helps out with the design and some of the other slashing animation as well. So yeah, this shot was one of the first ones that came together and really helped to set the style, like the bloom and all that. Here you can see a few minor details like penetrations that later get fixed or the face floating. The ketchup was something that also came on like pretty late. As you can see here, on the previous one it's just a mesh, and then on this new one we have the droplets, and those are meta balls. I just scaled and moved around meta balls, and they work really well to sell this ketchup. They're just meta balls that get splashed. So here you can see what happens when you go from the HDRI to adding some lights and even small details like the gun is meant to be made out of pen. You can see some of the reflections there of the metal parts. And here again, a little bit of the back and forth of that lighting. And this shot goes still through a little bit more changes once we add the temple on the back. You'll see that on the next revision. So yeah, it's a matter of like going through this, and on each of these stages, I just play it through and write down stuff that sucks on it and stuff that I need to fix. You know, in this instance, for example, one of the notes was, oh, I need to tighten up the rubber band, but it feels like they're grabbing girl, and then some lighting stuff, penetrations, all stuff that needs to be polished and fixed. Here we can see all the monks from the temple, the rice monks that were killed. This is meant to make you think about the Crusades and the killing of Christians in Japan, which was a thing that actually happened by traditionalists. Just there were a lot of elements that fit in together well with this analogy and you know, the pure race, and obviously there's a link to Nazi Germany.
I guess I'm trying to show how racism used to be more out in the open and now it's hidden or something.
But yeah, this is the first shot, and this is meant to be horrifying. The temple, like I said, I had to take it out because it was a little bit too distracting having the big temple in there. This shot is very close to the final one. This was also one of the first shots that got to the final stage early on. Here you can see a little bit of the subsurface scatter of the ketchup bottle, but also some jagged edges that get rounded up at the end. That was a low poly issue. There's hundreds of little details like that. Here also the metal balls to the rescue. I was so surprised of how well it worked out. And here's the thing, like I can do a simulation, particle simulation, and some fluids. It's just gonna take a long time, and within the budget that I'm currently working on and my strong suit being animation, although full disclaimer, the animation is meant to be like really crappy and simple, and that is a limit that I impose on myself. Otherwise this episode would have taken 6 months to animate by myself.
Too damn long.
But having said that, like the ketchup, it was a lot easier for me to draw it, and what I had done initially was just to animate it in 2D and then come in and replicate that in 3D. So here you can see the 2D ketchup that I animated, and this served as the guide for the 3D stuff. Once I have the 2D layer on and try to replicate that with the meta balls, and these are just hundreds of meta balls squashed and linked together. You can even see some of the jagginess from the resolution being low, but it works really well. It just takes a lot of time. I set aside like a day or two. Final pass. And here we have the temple. We had to start with a shot of the temple. That's the last shot from episode 1. In terms of continuity, I needed to connect the two. This was Bunny's idea, the composer. He said like, dude, we need to link them up. And I thought it was a really good suggestion. I really like the way the autofocus works here. It really gives a sense of scale. Like I went with this super extreme bokeh that we got a little bit of a tilt shift but not really. Like it's super small. So yeah, when working with miniatures, that was the whole idea, that things were really small and they got out of focus very quickly. So yeah, here you can see, a lot of cleaning up of these things. This shot is a great example of a little bit of polishing. So having the out of focus here and the clouds and the rest of the elements which aren't there on the previous version, it's kind of cool to see the progression. And I tweaked the hell out the position of the clouds so that they really lead your eye to where it needs to be, which is identifying from shot 3 that there's a ketchup and like the Tamaki woman. I just wanted to focus on them. I even cheated a little. So if you check continuity on this one, you should see the monks on the right, but I decided to keep them out just so that we didn't spoil that surprise. And here I added like the arc just to cover them up. On this one, it seemed like it wouldn't fly. It's on the back and out of focus. So hopefully you're not looking at them on the first run at the monks, but then on the second one, you can see them. And I scaled the sushis up for this shot. They will look on scale with Tori art. Here we have some animations of the sushi chanting "We shall prevail." My eldest is one of the voices of the sushis. Really happy about that. This is very stylized lighting. Something that I had to go through and add on each of the grease pencil layers. What I'm doing here is that I have the grease pencil object in Blender. It's parented to the controller of the face on each of these characters. So what happens is that when you move the controller, the grease pencil actually moves with it, and that's great for keeping the consistency up. And I wanted to have that handmade vibe to it. What I did was to make the decision that all these were going to have a drop shadow, and it is meant to imply the cell process where you would put like a transparent cell on top of the film and actually photograph it, and that would sometimes cast a little bit of a shadow on each of the shots. You're gonna see and I think it adds just a tiny bit of detail to each of these. On the final one, fixing the lip sync and all the penetration on the grease pencil takes a long time. Here you can see, some of the changes in the lighting of the previous version versus this one. It's just tweaking and compositing, tweaking of the color correction. Like I said, this shot very spot on early on, but still you can see some of the changes to just having some new lights in and tweaking the color correction. Here I added some distortion to the barrel of the gun so that it would read clearly, adding the hose to the ketchup. A lot of these shots got significantly better the moment I added the flaming castle on the back. First, it gave you like a sense of space, and second, it added a moving element for these shots that had a very little animation. Here as well, I am hoping that your attention doesn't go to the monks, because Miyamoto hasn't seen them yet, and the idea is that the reason why he hasn't seen them is because there's a lot of mist here and there's just a fire, and it's like an unusual thing that your eye wouldn't be drawn to it. The rubber bands were squeezed in. Here you can see like one frame of the rubber bands getting extended. I just replaced that. Replace the model, turn one off, and just duplicate it. And that's just a simple curve with an extrude on it and some textures. All I see when I hit play on these are little mistakes, and it's meant to be charming. And if you roll with aesthetic, it's great. If not, you're gonna be distracted as fuck. For example, here I only see like the hand that's completely still on the back as he moves forward, and here I see like a pop. But when you look at like stop motion, like it has much of it, and yeah, I just decided to go with it and understand that I am one person creating, this 2 minutes of animation in a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months. So I need to pick my battles, and hopefully once we get more people involved or if we get more people involved in here, I'll be able to like tweak those things and get it just perfect. So yeah, I love the fire on the back here. What I tried to do before was to have a sun that framed this, but the fire worked much better. Just having like the out of focus and the little excess on their eyes, the moment really resonates once you add the smoke and and the mist and all that. And here tweaking the lighting a lot, and you can see this is one of the shots that it's a hard shot to get right because there's nothing happening on it and it's a very empty frame. What do? Like, do you reframe it? Do you change the floor? There's a few things you can do. Ultimately, I just ended up emphasizing a little bit the lighting, adding some mist, and trying to understand that this is a quiet moment, and like hopefully the negative space of this sells the shot. And yeah, this one also, like once I added the fire on the back, it really helped with the pause. Before it felt just a little bit too long, but now that you have the fire, it worked just perfect. But yeah, that's that. And the idea is that he slices through the ketchup bottle and like it blasts out and slashes through him, and it's madness. Here I add a little bit more animation of that sushi running. You can see the riceless and the tamaki dead on the back. And the final shot, which was one of the last shots that came together. Usually that's not always the case. But yeah, that's what we have, like the Total Samurai Sushi. It was a lot of work, a lot of interesting stuff and challenges. And hopefully they come together in a nice episode. I'm really looking forward to doing episode 3. I have the first 10 episodes blocked out, and I'm humming out last just animating these. It's a ton of hard work, but yeah, really fun to see it all together. So if you haven't seen episode 2, please go and check it out. I hope you join and are along for the journey. That's it. Bye bye.